If your dreams do not scare you, they are not big enough, by Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. The size of your dreams must always exceed your current capacity to achieve them. If your dreams do not scare you, they are not big enough.
The advantage of hydroponics is with hop growing specifically is, like I said, a hops harvest once a year. They have a 12-month grow cycle and harvest once a year. With hydroponics, I get to harvest every 3 months because I directly dial the nutrients that the hops need into the roots, and whereas they have to wait for Mother Nature to be kind to them for them to grow out in the Southern Cape. I control its yields.
Hello guys, welcome back to our YouTube channel. My name is Kwanda Nyazeka. If it's your first time here, we are talking about everything entrepreneurship, agripreneurship, financial education, as well as running your own business. If it's your first time, please consider subscribing. If you are a returning subscriber, thank you so much for coming back. As you can see, today I'm not alone and I'm not in the familiar space that I normally shoot my videos, but I'm here in Braamfontein, Constitutional Hill, and I'm not alone. I'm with Khaya Maloney. He's going to tell us about his journey in hydroponic farming. So he's an engineering student and he's also an agripreneur and also a hydroponic farmer. So welcome, Khaya Maloney. Thank you so much Thank you so much for allowing us to come to your space. We really appreciate it, and I hope that the audience is going to learn so much from everything that you're going to tell us. So please tell us about yourself. Who is Khaya Maloney? What do you do?
Thank you, Kwanda. Thank you for coming to visit me here at Afrileap. My name is Khaya Maloney. I'm an agri-entrepreneur, formerly a student of engineering, and a all-round entrepreneur, just a hustler. So this is Afrileap. We are a hydroponic hop house, the first of its kind in South Africa. So what we do is we grow hops. As you know or may not know, hops is the main ingredient in beer. It's a nice coney type of crop that grows, that's region specific. It grows in Georgia in the Southern Cape. And a few years ago I came up with this concept of a 4-season hydroponic hop house. Why that's significant is because hops, naturally, the ones that grow in George, they grow for 12 months in a 12-month cycle and harvest once a year. And because they're so far in George, it means they're not local. So I thought of a 4-season solution using hydroponics and controlled environment agriculture. As you can see, everything is technical back here. So I took an agri-tech approach to it in the way I grow hops and made it more local and to provide to the craft brewers, the cuisine, and the restaurant market. There's a lot of people that use hops, and hops are a great crop for multiple uses. So for myself, how I started, it was just out of curiosity. I formally don't have an agricultural background, but I generally have a niche or key to problem solve or to challenge myself to pursue things that are difficult to maintain, or difficult to sustain, and do it in a much more sustainable, technologically viable way. So I joined an incubator, Wouldn't It Be Cool Incubators, with the UAI initiative, the Urban Agriculture Initiative, that had a plan to put greenhouses such as this on top of rooftops in inner city Johannesburg in dilapidated buildings to create employment and to foster agriculture and social inclusion. And yeah, so I did that, and here I am today.
You mentioned that this is the first of its kind. I think that's one of the important things about it that I forgot to mention at the beginning. It's the first of its kind in South Africa. So I just want to ask you, you've already touched on the number of things that I'm going to ask you, but I just want you to unpack on some of the things that you mentioned here. Mm-hmm. As you can see, guys, we are not in a traditional farm where you would see soil, but we are seeing a system here which is known as hydroponic system. And what I know about hydroponics is that you don't require soil as a medium, but you require what Khaya is going to tell us. So I want to know, what is hydroponic system, since we don't see soil here, but we see that there's plants growing. What is a
Okay.
hydroponic system?
So essentially, hydroponics is a type of controlled environment agriculture where production is done not through soil, but through water, nutrient-rich water that keeps continuously pumping and recycling the water. Within a hydroponics, there are systems, so different grow systems. There are A-frames, there are Dutch bucket, the Beto systems. What you see here is a Dutch bucket system. Dutch bucket system is just a bunch of bags filled with cocoa peat inside, not soil. So it's a type of a coconut husk. It's a type of medium made of coconut husk. That water runs through it passively, and it breathes and it absorbs the nutrients and keeps the nutrients. So whatever you plant inside of the bag of the Dutch bucket, the water moves from the reservoir into the pipes, into the Dutch bucket, right into the cocoa peat, feeding directly into the roots of whatever crop you decide to grow. So multiple of varieties and crops grow within this Dutch bucket system. So every type of growing has its specific needs and ways in which and hydroponic systems I prefer. So since our hops are a climber, I have to do this thing called trellising, where you put up a whole long wire. Hops grow about 8 centimeters per day. So it's a lot, you understand? Yes. I need something that's high. I need a greenhouse that's high. So you do this thing, we call them climbers, and then you wrap around the vine around it. So as the hydroponic system is pumping water and nutrients every 4 hours for 20 minutes with nutrient-rich water, you buy these fertilizers to put the nutrients in the water, things like solution A and solution B, which involve an NPK solution, which also include nitrogen, phosphorus and potassium. So it gets technical. It sounds daunting when you start out, but it really is an easy learning curve. I'm able to employ one person here to help me out with all the pests and everything. The advantage of growing this hydroponically is that unlike traditional farm, we save the water we use because we recycle the water we use. And that's the advantage of agriculture in hydroponics as opposed to traditional farming. The other one is we emit less waste in here. We get to control the heat, we control the sunlight that comes in through photoperiodism. So there's a lot of things that go into hydroponic farming that inform your growing. So to answer your question, there's a lot about agriculture and hydroponics, but based on what you're trying to grow, this is how you start. For me, it's the Dutch bucket system.
Okay. That's interesting, and it sounds so detailed. When you said that there is a lot that goes into it, I could feel it, And also, I wanted to ask, what do you need? You've mentioned a number of things, but I think there's still some things that you left out. For example, I can see there's fans here. There's also lights inside this greenhouse. So I want to ask, what are the things that you need for you to start an hydroponic system?
So hydroponic systems vary in size. There's small hydroponics, and then there's massive, complex agri-tech solutions that go into hydroponics. It's basically to control the environment, to trick the plant into thinking that where it grows naturally is the same. By daylight, by manipulating it in terms of making the hydroponic roof house dark, so it thinks it's night, so it flowers quicker. And so through various funding and various arms of the government, I was able to secure a lot of funding, and I encourage people that are interested in doing something like this to look, even if you go on Google and type agricultural grants, there's a lot of people, there's a lot of CSI initiatives that are looking to fund agricultural initiatives. There's a lot of companies, Tlowane by SAB, there's Whipsy with Mila Fresh. There's just a lot of people that are willing to help people get started in agriculture because of the various 2030 sustainability development goals by the UN. A lot of companies, even corporate, are looking to fund such initiatives. So with knowing that, I went out and I looked for as much funding, entered as many competitions, asked for grants, for loans, for sponsorship, to feed back into my farm. I sold my car, or my ability to buy a car, and I put everything into this farm just to make sure that this thing becomes a success.
Yes.
Because it is such a big thing, and it is one of a kind.
Yes.
That's at a commercial scale that I can think of. I've reached out to people that have tried it, but there's not that much. So I put in as much of the grant funding and money to make this thing possible. So there's, as you can see, there's curtains. There's dark curtains. I don't know if you can see over
Yes.
there. There's dark curtains to trick the light into thinking that it's dark. If you look at the row, there's rows of lights because hops grow in George, and in George they have 16 hours of sunlight. Here in Joburg we only have 12 to 14 hours of sunlight. Hops need a lot of sunlight, so to trick them, I added lights to trick them into thinking that days are longer, so they grow longer. We have pulsators and extractor fans back there. If you look at those are to bring the temperatures down. Hops like a nice cool Mediterranean ocean type sand, which we don't have here in Johannesburg. So I had to get those things. They bring the temperature down. The sensors that can sense the temperature, and once the temperature reaches a certain amount and goes higher, they come on to bring a nice cool mist to bring the temperature back down to the temperature which the hops like. And it's very difficult. Hops are very finicky, picky plant. They're difficult to grow. So a lot of research goes into whatever crop you decide to grow. If you're gonna follow this path, you have to research and follow up on what your plant likes and what are the ideal conditions. We're trying to get it, so with the funding and the grants and everything I used, I got as much technology in this farm to bring it as close to a George climate as possible. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, that's interesting. And again, I want to mention this. It sounds so detailed.
It is.
You know, when I got here,
quite easy.
I was so fascinated. I'm like, I've always been interested in the idea of hydroponics, but I've never been to one. It's my first time here.
Okay.
So when I
Welcome.
saw the curtains here, I was asking myself, what's going on? You know, it didn't come into my mind that you're actually tricking the plants to
Yeah.
think that it's at night when it's actually.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's the advantage of hydroponics. It's just you can manipulate the environment. Yeah, that's why they call it controlled environment agriculture. And then from there you learn and do your research. There's many examples internationally on Google, on YouTube.
Yes.
Everything I know I learned from YouTube. Like I said, I don't have a background in agriculture. No one in my family. We don't have farms. So you learn as you go with hydroponics.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, that's great. That's great. I can judge from how you explain it that there was a lot of research that went into it. So how long did you research, and how long did it take for you to start executing the idea?
So I don't really keep score or keep time as a measure of what's happening. Obviously, I have deadlines that I keep for myself.
Yes.
For things I need to achieve, because it is expensive, and you quickly learn that farming in general is about numbers more than it is about passion,
Yes.
about knowledge. It's about numbers. What you can do with the space that you have to the market that you can deliver to. So with that in mind, I just kept chucking away and hitting away. I take money from side hustles and put it in my agricultural pursuits. So I started in 2016 with no idea of what I wanted to grow. Hops came to me the more I kept investigating and researching what's better, what I can innovate, which industries are in desperate need of innovation.
Yes.
So with that, the passion grows with you. You don't have to necessarily start with a passion, but start with what you have where you are. You even if you have a shed, a back room, or something that's dark, you can grow mushrooms. Even if you have a row of something in your backyard, you can grow potatoes and tomatoes. And from there, the passion will grow, and you'll challenge yourself, and you'll see when you look up 5 to 6 years will have gone, and you'll be doing an interview like this.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
You mentioned something very interesting, that you just need to start where you are. You know, a number of times, especially young people, they don't start where they are with what they have.
Yeah.
We always have this idea that we need funding, we need 100 million for someone to
Yes,
find
yes,
this
yes,
idea.
yes.
Instead of starting where you are and starting with what you have.
Exactly.
Okay. So you mentioned that you had to sell your car, which is a big sacrifice in order for this to be what it is today. Tell us about that. How did it happen? Was it an easy decision to make? You know.
It really wasn't. It really wasn't an easy idea. I wouldn't say I sold the car more than I decided to not buying a car. I had the option to buy the car, for the full amount of the car, through prize monies, through savings, through side hustles. But I decided that MTN rank is not that bad, and I would come here every day, just get on a taxi,
Yes.
and just because I knew I had a greater vision, I could see where the future was. So little discomforts at the present were worth it, were well worth it. So I put it into my agricultural pursuit, to say, like, I know where I'm going. I don't have to prove anything to anyone. So I bootstrapped myself, and I took all the money that I was making and I put it into what would be now this farm. And from there, a lot of things came from that, that are going to do tremendous things in the field of agriculture. But it started with just those sacrifices of deciding, when you have a girlfriend, you need a car.
Yes.
But you have to also have us find someone that will understand where you're trying to grow together. So it was a sacrifice, and I had to think about it. But it pays off later on.
Yes.
It pays off later on. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you said that most of the information that you have hydroponics and the hops that you're farming here, you got it from the internet or
Yes.
YouTube.
Yes, yes.
What can you say to young people? Young people, they always go to the internet and search for things that are not very constructive.
Yes,
Whereas
yes, yes.
yourself, you got the information to start this great hydroponic farm that you can see here. How is it like for yourself? Do you sometimes, when you're on the internet, check for useless stuff, or you may be always checking for something that can contribute to you as a person?
So even how I started, I think it starts with curiosity.
Yes.
And always believing in an ultimate self. I've always had that belief that I'm going to be a great person in the world. I'm still on a continuous journey of just learning to be that person, to become that person. But I was very cognizant very early as to what the steps would take to get to being that person. So even how the farming started, it was a Sunday evening in 2016, when people were watching Date My Family. I decided to switch over to Mnet because I felt like, as much as we all need entertainment, as much as that's someone else's passion,
Yes.
it wasn't feeding into who I was trying to become as a person.
Yes.
So I went to Mnet and I saw this company in New York building rooftops in New York. It's called Brooklyn Grange. And from there, I went to YouTube, and YouTube led me to something else and something else. And it just kept like that. It became a stumbling block of just a well. I went into a black hole of just information, a rabbit hole of just information. And you learn with every step. You just keep going, how to improve yourself. A lot of people will be like, how do you even use YouTube to learn? Like, where do you even start? They don't know.
Yes.
You don't know what you don't know, and that's true.
That's true.
And something as simple as, how can I make agriculture or hydroponics in my backyard? YouTube is the second biggest search engine in the world after Google. Second biggest. So anything you type into the Google search bar, you'll find. So things, even if you say like how to do an at-home hydroponic system, you will definitely find information. And then from there, you'll take it to the next information and the next information. And you're just gonna keep going. You're gonna look for funding opportunities. You're gonna look for different types of agriculture. And that all feeds into, but you have to be curious and not just be looking at videos or music videos, because as good as those are, and it is someone's passion, they don't feed in who you are trying to be. Yeah.
I like how you put it, that you're not disregarding it, but you say that it's someone's passion.
It's someone's
and it's
passion.
not fitting to who you want to become.
Exactly.
That's great. That's great. So what are the challenges that you face in this hydroponic farm? What are some of the challenges?
So the advantage of hydroponics is, with hop growing specifically, is, like I said, hops harvest once a year. They have a 12-month grow cycle and harvest once a year. With hydroponics, I get to harvest every 3 months because I directly dial the nutrients that the hops need into the roots, and whereas they have to wait for Mother Nature to be kind to them for them to grow out in the Southern Cape. I control its yields, I control all of, but with that said, in George they have hectares and hectares of farmland, whereas I only have 300 squares over here. So even though I have more harvest, I still have a smaller space, and it becomes very difficult to continuously supply or have the capacity to supply markets at a small scale. But like I said, I have a forward thinking mentality that if I do it on this scale and get it right on this scale, I can go to any investor and show them the numbers, show them the projections, and they will find something, knowing that if it works at this scale, it will work with 12 of these, it will work with 100 of these, because the numbers make sense, and hops are such a rare crop, and if you can do that 4 times, you're solving a big problem that people had. There's a shortage of something, and there's a big demand and low supply. So if you expand this, therefore means you can actually cater to a market continuously and open a whole ecosystem of jobs along the value chain. And that's what the disadvantage is an advantage in that sense. My small space, once I get it right and I know the numbers 100%,
Yes.
I can go to any investor that will look at this and be like, we can invest in something like this.
Okay, you mentioned that you had to apply for a lot of funding when you were starting, and I just want to know, when you were applying for funding, at that time you had already started or not? Because I sometimes hear that when you're applying for funding, you need to have started something. You need to come to those funders or investors to show them, Uti, this is what I have started, or this is what I've been doing, in order to convince them to take you serious.
I agree with you. There's a lot of barriers and red tape in getting and accessing certain fundings for certain things. But I'm always cautionary and tell people not to put a blanket statement and just generalize and be discouraged by something like that. You will start off with an idea. You might not have money. I didn't have money. Everything you see here is funded by someone else. It's just the research to see who was available and who was helping people without anything.
Yes.
And there's a lot of people like that. So keep looking for people like that. You will start with interviews. You will start with a profile. You start with a business plan. You will start with something, but don't look at rejection as rejection. Look at it as immediate feedback. So you put in your business plan, they tell you, no, you need this from you. You go fix your financial model. You go do this, you go to this, but you apply here, you play for this award. You go to NYDA, they tell you what's wrong with it. You go to this different place, you go with another place. So everything is immediate feedback when you don't have the startup capital. And to go and look for millions is not advisable, because nobody is looking to give anybody millions.
Yes.
So start with small people. You can even start with friends and family. You can even start with your own hydroponic system and supply the local spaza shop,
Yes.
even if you're not making money. Go on YouTube and type how to build a hydroponic system in your backyard.
Yes.
They'll show you all the little things, the resources and materials that are in your surrounding areas that you can use, or maybe go back to Builder's Warehouse and buy a 7 rand pipe or PVC system that you can just set up for yourself. From there, you will learn as you supply the spaza shop that I have a client that I supply basil to, or whatever I'm growing. From there, you can take that to maybe urban agriculture or agriculture department, or a corporate sponsor, or someone that's willing to listen. And trust me, people feel like nobody wants to listen, but a lot of people. This is a very collaborative space. So if you come to people and show them that you have done something, you didn't just sit behind a computer and write something and expect millions. You show them that you actually did something, you started, you took initiative. And for me, it was just, I was fortunate enough to join the WIBC, WIBC, innovation and their UIA program, which is sponsored by cooperatives like GWK, National Treasury, Jobs Fund, Constitutional Hill as partners and sponsors. So things like that, they feed into your idea. You join initiative programs like that, you apply. A rejection is immediate feedback that something is not working and I need to go back and go change it and fix it and add to it, give it meat so I can flesh it out. And not just sit on my idea and my idea doesn't get funding, it means I'm useless and let me go sit back home. No,
Yes.
you always have to be consistently upgrading whatever you're trying to develop. Don't depend on anyone. Don't depend on one state of government. Don't depend on banks. I wouldn't advise going to banks. Don't go into something that will put you in the back foot in terms of loans and things you have to pay back immediately. There's a lot of initiatives, like I've said, that support urban agriculture in general. So just keep looking for them, going to Google and searching SAB Tawane Foundation, the WIPSI, wouldn't it be cool, incubator. They have something like that with Mila Fresh and UAI. So there's a lot of these things, but you just have to move from looking at music videos, even though that is someone's passion,
Yes.
and look for things that feed into who you're trying to become.
That's great. That's great. Absolutely.